right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming, joined by my colleague, Alex Konge-Ruzik. And in the background right now, we do have the Lille match on. We're just keeping an eye on that. But we have a few things to touch on today. The big one being the roster drop for the upcoming friendly match against Panama. And we'll talk a little Jonathan David, because our guy just scored against Real Madrid, which is a pretty cool moment for him as well. So hopefully you guys are excited. If you are, drop a like, say hello, and let us know your guys' thoughts on the roster, which I will bring up shortly. Alex is just getting up a tweet, which I'm going to share and then bring up the roster. So, Alex, I'm back after a nice little couple weeks back from a nice little honeymoon. It was a lot of fun, but how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. It's funny. I've just been, it's been a while since we did a video because obviously, usually it's you and I talking, on these subjects. So on one sense, it feels like I'm back too. And this just, we're sitting together, we're talking. It's nice just to be back. And you timed it well. I imagine it was intentional on your part, but you drop right back in. You get a CanMNT squad. And I mean, man, this is people who've been in our streams, this is right up the alley in terms of the sort of stuff we dive into. You got a bunch of dual nationals, some of the younger guys we've been following. Like, it's a pretty good squad.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'd say that there's probably 4 surprises ish. The big one we'll start with. We've been kind of teasing it for a while, and it's a shame that we can't actually release the interview because it's not out there. But we did interview Santiago Lopez. It will be dropping at some point on One Soccer. I mean, it was Alex. I mean, we recorded about a month ago, so I honestly can't. I just remember it was a really fun interview because it was such an exciting time. I think it was just shortly after the U20s. I think right around that time frame. But Santiago Lopez, it was kind of teased a little bit that he may be coming to camp. He wasn't a part of the September window, but he's now a part of the October one. So he's probably one of the biggest names for me, just in terms of excitement, a dual national and a player that, in my opinion, is kind of getting rewarded. I mean, he shined at the U20 level. It's great to see him playing like with Canada already. He's dipping his toe in because he's represented Mexico at, I believe, the U18 and 19 level, or one of the two. And now he gets an opportunity to link up with Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies. I don't know if he will play against Panama, but just being in camp, I think, is a big deal.
Oh, for sure. It's just something where what was really fascinating actually is that it ties in interestingly to some of what Jesse Marsch said and what Jesse Marsch has done. But last camp, he had the chance to call in Nathan Saliba. It was a bit of a last minute call. Maybe it was something that at the time wasn't definitely Saliba had been knocking on the door for a while now. But in terms of his form, it maybe wasn't the best we'd seen Saliba in the last while. But the opportunity came up. Saliba came in. He'd made his debut. And then I don't know if you haven't been following Saliba lately with Montreal, he's been fantastic for them. They've all of a sudden come alive here at the end of the season to make a playoff push. And you can immediately look at, all right, Saliba was in that Canadian environment. He takes his play up another level. And I think that's worth noting, that sometimes for these youngsters, it's good just to get them in that camp, to let them know, like, hey, look, we're looking at what you're doing. We're noticing where you're at, especially for these 3. Jamie Knight-Labelle, he's made his championship debut. He's at Bristol. He's on loan to Crew Alexandra in League 2. He's just 19. He's doing his thing, trying to become a full-on regular for Bristol long term. He's played for Canada's U20s and had good performances there. Santiago Lopez, as we mentioned, has made his Pumas debut. He's had a great, fantastic performance with the U20s, looking to establish himself as a Liga MX regular. Then, of course, you got Kwasi Poku, such a great CPL season. Also another Canadian U20, so great to see a bunch of U20s step up. He's made the move to Belgium. He's scoring goals. Look, all 3 of them, if Canada's, for their November squad, all 3 of them might not crack it. They're probably not going to crack it. But down the road, starting next year, the year after, as they continue to establish themselves, they can be key long-term pieces. And who knows, like Saliba's shown, maybe they could be pieces in November, and doing this now can be the start of that. And I thought it was really interesting that Jesse Marsch actually spoke of that. Like, yeah, no, that's genuinely the sort of template we want to set.
Absolutely. And I mean, just remember when Ismail Kone was given an opportunity. I mean, he was doing well at CF Montreal. He was brought into the Canadian team, and he took that opportunity. Doesn't Nathan Saliba's story kind of remind you a little bit of that trajectory when he starts breaking through at CF Montreal, playing really well, is given this opportunity without Kone? I mean, I don't know if he's going to walk into this starting spot. I'd probably say no. I would assume it would be Chouanier and Eustachio, but who knows? Maybe he comes off the bench at halftime, puts in a big performance, and all of a sudden Jesse Marsh is looking at him in a completely different way. Jamie Knight-Labelle, I'd say, is probably a little similar vibes to Luc de Fougerolles, just in terms of a couple of youngsters, ones for the future. But let's talk about Zoran Bassong here, Alex, because what I found very interesting is obviously there's two Canadians playing for Sporting KC. Stephen Afrifo was one, and Bassong. But the interesting thing about him is that he plays a lot as a center back. He's played as a left back, but he's been drifting up into the midfield now, and that's what caught my attention. I didn't know if it would have got on Jesse's radar so soon, but because he hasn't been, it's not like he's been doing it all season. This has been somewhat recent, but he's starting to lock down a starting spot for Sporting KC. It's in the midfield. We know that we've had midfielder issues. We don't have a Kone in this group. So I'm curious to see, Alex, do you think he was brought in because he was listed as a defender? Do you think that Jesse's bringing him in as a utility player? Do you think he's looking at that sixth position? I guess because left backs, what do we have here? We have Davies, we have Atakubi, so that kind of tells me he's not looked at as a left back. Center backs, I believe we have 5. So I don't know. I feel like he's probably in the midfield, no?
He was listed as a fullback on the roster for what it's worth. And the way I kind of interpreted it, he seems like the Alistair Johnston replacement, because Johnston got injured last night in Champions League. He came off early around 80th minute, and then Jesse Marsh revealed today he's kind of been dealing with a bit of a niggling back issue, I want to say it is. So like even before the injury yesterday, they were already, I don't think they were going to bring him this camp just to let him recover and rest. So that's kind of the way I read it, that they saw it as, we'll bring him in as a wide player. But Jesse Marsh was asked about Bassong, and he said, like, we admire the versatility. The versatility is huge. We want to see what he can do in midfield, in other positions. And yeah, I think that's probably the big bonus of him. He started in the US Open Cup final, playing in that double pivot. There's a lot of things that Jesse Marsh would do. So it seems like for Bassong, it's just one of those where maybe we see him a bit everywhere. Maybe he slots in at left back if that's what the game needs, or based on his camp performances, maybe Jesse Marsh sees him a little long term as a midfielder. But what we've seen with Bassong is he's always been versatile, right? Like he came onto the scene as like a winger. He's played fullback, CM, number 10, center back. There's clear that there's some versatility there, and I think that Jesse Marsh is keeping an eye on that is a good sign for Bassong.
I immediately thought, just because of his position at Sporting, like what he's been playing recently, I thought maybe Seager would be moving to the right back position. Then he's actually replacing Seager higher up the pitch, because we like it would be Johnson, Larea as your two right backs, but since Johnson's not there, you have Larea, you have Seager, and then Bassong's potentially in the midfield. We have Saliba in the midfield, like I mentioned, Chouanier, Eustachio. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see, but I think it's an intriguing profile. I'm glad he was given an opportunity. And then there's the 3 younger players with Jamie Knight-Labelle, Saliba, and, or I guess Poku and Santiago. So I mean, it's a pretty young team. But out of some of the new faces
as well, Saliba, you got like a de Fougerolles. It's a young team.
I'd say to my surprises, though, for me personally, it was Bassong, Knight-Labelle, Poku, and Santiago Lopez. And I'm gonna ask you, Alex, out of those 4 who are surprises to me, you could throw Saliba in there if you want to, if you think he was a surprise to you. Who do you think, if any of them, would get any game time in this Panama match? Because it's interesting. It's a friendly, but it's almost not a friendly, because there is something on the line, which I think makes this match very intriguing. I don't know if you want to explain that quickly, with the impact of this match could have on the CONCACAF ratings, and then of course the Nations League.
Yeah, well, again, Jesse Marsh spoke about it. If you do want to hear all of his comments, it is up on the One Soccer YouTube, so you can hear the full depth of everything he talked about.
And I will say that I was out at an appointment today, so I was not at the presser. I texted Alex and said, "Hey, how to go?" But so I haven't seen it yet myself, so I'll have to watch it a little bit later. So if I'm throwing questions at Alex that he's already answered, he gets to deliver it to you guys. But yes, I did see that the presser was posted on YouTube by Alex today.
So that's it. It's perfect timing. You get us, you throw out the questions, I can answer with the help of what Jesse Marsh is saying. So there isn't full assumptions. It's a bit
beautiful.
It all works out. Beautiful. Bit of, I guess, it's reporting, right? Exactly. We're putting it together. So for Marsh, what he said, and it's true. The latest CONCACAF rankings dropped like this week, and Canada is actually second. They're ahead of the US, but behind Mexico And with how it works, and especially if Mexico loses to the US, Canada can take top spot in those CONCACAF rankings, if all goes well and they beat Panama. So Jesse Marsh said, like, look, they take this Panama team serious. They know there's some good players. Marsh mentioned actually that he's coached a few of them. I imagine I'm not sure who he might have coached, but I thought that was interesting. So that's going to be competitive. But I also think Jesse Marsh will realize, it's also friendlies. And one thing I thought was really interesting that he mentioned is that he said there's a strong chance they don't bring everyone to Toronto. He said, look, there's some guys who might just do the Montreal portion because there's 26. They're not going to need 26 for a friendly, and they leave. What he did say is he doesn't know who those players are. That's going to be down to form, fit, timing, all of that. I think based on what he said, though, I feel like Knight Labelle is a bit of a sneaky chance because he explicitly mentioned the Wales interest, that he spoke with Knight Labelle's agent, that he spoke with Knight Labelle, that he knows there's that interest there from Wales. So I think if we're looking at from the tactical cap type perspective, he's probably the big priority, just because, of course, Lopez in Mexico, you do wonder what's going on there, but we haven't seen many rumblings from Mexico. They kind of just seem like, they haven't been, usually like with Flores, for example, a few years ago, you saw Mexico lurking, right? Like we haven't seen Mexico lurking. So I'd say Knight Labelle is probably the priority in that regard. Although I think in terms of the players who get on, the forwards will always have a better chance. So I'd say that would probably open the door for a Lopez to get a chance, or a Poku.
I like that because, I believe Jamie Knight Labelle is eligible for England, Wales, and Canada, which obviously I think England's a bit of a stretch, but I just looked into him a couple days ago, and I think it's his mother that's Wales, and so that's a realistic target, so that's very interesting. But let's get into some comments here, guys. Drop some hellos, questions, get them going. There's a few in here right now. I know that the Champions League games are still on, so we're just kind of keeping an eye on those as well. And that's where I'm going to go right here with off topic. Jonathan David with the PK. Davies is playing well, but Villa, actually, I think Villa scored, did they not?
Yeah, John Duran. He can't stop scoring, the former MLS guy.
Villa. All right. I'm going to bring up some scores here. But all right, Alex, let's talk about Jonathan David just very, very quickly here, because on the weekend, he scored a hat trick. Some really nicely taking goals. I was livid at the end of the match. He was supposed to take I don't know if he's supposed to, but he should have taken a penalty. He would have had his fourth goal that game. We saw Cole Palmer score 4 earlier, so it could have been a little back-to-back big time players scoring goals. I don't know why he didn't take it. Gomez took it, and then on top of that, he missed it. So anyways, but look at that week for Jonathan David. Scores 3 goals over the weekend. Should have scored 4, and then scores against Real Madrid in the Champions League. It's pretty crazy, man, for a Canadian to be doing these kind of things. What do you make of his form? What do you make, I guess, of his future? We're not going to get into all the different teams and stuff that we've constantly hear, although Barcelona has just been mentioned as well, if you want to talk about that one. Because if you are Barcelona and you are interested in Jonathan David and you see him scoring against Real Madrid, I'm assuming that's going to make you maybe want to sign him even more.
Yeah, I mean, this is just David is helping his case. My goodness, the guy who's making his case in this game is Lucas Chevalier, who's having a bonkers game. I don't know if you've seen some of the saves he's made, including the one he just made on what looks to be Fran Garcia right at point blank. But no, David, he's a free agent next year. He's been rumored to move for so long. He's had the body of work. Right now, this season is just about cementing that, and a perfect hat trick against Le Havre, left foot, right foot, header, all beautiful goals. Now going into the big games, the Champions League. What I like too is that he missed the earlier chance, the header, and that could have frayed his confidence. His team wins a penalty, he steps up to take. He put that thing top bins. That wasn't a safety penalty. He went for just all right, I'm gonna bang it, I'm gonna get that goal. So for David, it's just for him, it feels like next year the world's going to be his oyster as a free agent of where he wants to go. And I'm just fascinated to see what he does in terms of the fit, in terms of everything. And hopefully he can just keep scoring for Lille, because, that's going to help Lille. They the deeper they go in the Champions League, the better he does. It can only help him in his next move in terms of the salary he gets. And, that's all positives for David. So good thing, staying at Lille was all about, all right, really cement yourself as a top player, and based on how things are trending so far, he's on the right track.
The nice thing about staying at Lille for me when I pictured him maybe doing it, because everybody, I would say 90% of Canadians probably wanted to see him move on and find, you know, a bigger club. The one thing that could be going in his favor is that if he does stay at Lille, he walks into being a free agent, which is important. You know, it gives him a lot of opportunity to maybe find the project that works best for him, and he's very intriguing to certain teams because, you know, he comes as a free agent. But on top of that, Lille did qualify for the Champions League. So he does give himself a really good opportunity to thrive in Ligue 1 because Mbappe's not there. You know, if you score a goal scoring title, that's always big in a top 5 league. And then if you follow it up with performances in the Champions League, that's important. But I mean, it's one thing to score in the Champions League against Feyenoord, for example, or whoever it may be. But he just scored against Real Madrid. Like, he scored against the biggest club in the world in my eyes. And right now, I mean, we're going to keep an eye on the rest of this game. It's 1-0 Lille. So he could knock on wood. Score. Yeah, I'm not gonna even say, but you know where I'm going with it.
It's too early. You can't.
Yeah, there's still time. But it's 1-0 left. It's a big goal. It's a big opportunity. So, very exciting week for Jonathan David. And as a player who's had issues sometimes with streakiness, I think these type of weeks are just going to do wonders for him when it comes to having teams interested. As we already know that there are, but hat-trick and then a goal against Real Madrid. I mean, you can't make that stuff up.
No, it's again, for a striker, this is you know, and again, it kind of almost reminds you too that the level he's playing at, like, he's not playing at some terrible club or in a terrible league. Of course, you know, he can move up, but again, it's a good reminder of that, you know, where the level he's at and that he can still grow, and you know, it will help him too, like, for that next step too.
Absolutely. So let's take a look now, Alex, at a few players who are maybe left off of this roster. One caught my, I mean, Alistair Johnson, Ismail Kone left off due to injury. Did you hear anything? Because I wasn't in the press, so I'm going to throw it your way. But the other name that really stood out to me, there's a few others we'll touch on, but Kamal Millar. I thought that was a bit of an interesting one. Is there something I'm missing? Is he have an injury, or is he left off for some new blood?
He's healthy. I saw him play this weekend in Vancouver. It was Portland Whitecaps. Kamal Millar played left back, interestingly. He's been doing that a bit lately. And he's not listed on Portland's injury report for tonight. And Jesse Marsh did speak on Kamal Millar and Samuel Piette. What he kind of said was he felt with those two in particular, and Kamal Millar, he knows what he has. Like, he knows that there's reliable, there's dependable. And I think that's fair in the sense that Marsh has clearly not seen Kamal Millar as a starter, but he hasn't dismissed him either, right? Like, he's turned to him in some key moments off the bench. He's shown that, like, all right, I'll still trust you. And I think there's the same kind of there with Samuel Piette. So he's thinking of this, like, why do I need to see Kamal Millar this camp? You know, let him just stay with Portland, do his thing. Let's look at Jamie Knight-Labelle, especially given the cap tie. Let's give Luc de Frugerolles a bit of another boost as he tries to push up to Fulham. Let's kind of look at some different options. So that's what he said on Kamal Millar. And I think that's fair, because I was kind of, you know, wondering of, like, all right, Kamal Millar's kind of already lost his spot. This could be a key chance to win it back. But I think this just shows for Marsh that the dependability sometimes that you have with veterans. And I think it's a bit unfortunate for Millar that it kind of signifies that unless there are injuries, we might not see much of him starting. But who knows? Maybe this gives him a bit of a boost to step things up and to try and win a spot long term, because certainly he's still not old for a center back. And while Bombito and Cornelius are the clear number ones for now, both based on what they've done for country and now for club, you know, Millar will still have a role to play, especially in terms of that left-sided depth. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of right-footed options coming up, but in terms of left-sided depth, especially after Scott Kennedy's move, Kamal Millar's got a lot of importance.
I agree. So, all right, Alex, let's sit back. It's hit the 95th minute, and let's just keep an eye on the rest of this game quickly. Then we'll get into some comments. If you guys are just joining us in the stream, say hello. We're chatting about the roster that was dropped today. Get some questions in, or you can ask about the Champions League matches that are going on right now.
And we're gonna get to the questions there at the top, because I know there's some good ones there from Christian. And keep sending in any other questions, even if we don't get to them right away. We'll get there.
We will. Just this could be a historic moment. I would say if we can see this out.
Say Modric over the ball is always terrifying.
Yeah, I don't like that. Reminds me of the Canada watch alongs we've done, but a little different.
Final whistle? Or wow, they did it. Look at the celebrations.
Wow. Wow. Match-winning goal from Jonathan David.
Incredible. That's again, this is the sort of stuff that for some, it's worth noting that a lot of us, we've watched Jonathan David in the Liga, you know, right? We're the quote unquote, we're the sickos. We watch him regularly. we see Le Havre, you know, maybe casually you're not going to watch Lille Le Havre and keep an eye on this game. People are watching Real Madrid. People are watching these sorts of big games. And that's another important thing to remember, that it's good for him to score on this stage, that, yeah, even if it's a penalty, if it's something like that, this is a stage where people are watching, and the hat trick maybe might not have caught as many eyes given the opposition, or, you know, Liga, and people aren't always following. UCL people are paying attention.
This is crazy. Yeah, I would argue, Alex, that scoring the match-winning goal in the Champions League against Real Madrid to help Lille pick up a historic win is probably, on the grand scheme of things, in terms of interest and just attention. Yeah, I would say that's bigger than scoring a hat trick over the weekend in Liga. Would you agree? Do you think you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. In terms of attention, especially had the hat trick been versus PSG, okay, maybe you can have an argument. But I think, yes, in this case, 1,000%. People, especially Real Madrid, this was their first loss since like February, they were saying, altogether. Like, not even just like in UCL, like first loss in all comps since February. It's like the super team with Mbappe. You know, this is the defending UCL champs. Like, yeah, kind of a big deal.
That's why I'm literally at a loss for words right now. What a moment for Jonathan David. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, let's get into some comments here, guys. So keep sending them in. We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back a little bit to Bassong. Duncan says Bassong is my question mark. In Montreal, he didn't seem good. Always came in to lose games that were winnable. He was often a downgrade for what was on the pitch, like a Kosi at TFC. Liabilities. So I would say Bassong's definitely a different player now than the player he was at Montreal. And I would say the biggest, I mean, I don't know, like Alex, if you agree, but I feel like because he started to drift up in the midfield, I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons that Jesse Marsch called him in. But again, I haven't seen the presser, so and Alex has heard the question, so he can stop me if he thinks so. But the Canadian men's national team have a lot of versatile players, and we've had versatile players for a very long time. It was a staple under John Herman. So I feel like players, when they come into a camp, and they can play in a back four as a center back, in a back three as a center back, they can play as a left back, and then all of a sudden they go up into the midfield where we are in need of players. I mean, we saw how excited everybody was when Nico Seeger came in to this team. And obviously having the injury of Kone, I just feel like it makes him a much more intriguing player. And he's had a very interesting route as well, Alex. This is a player that so many times I have personally ruled out and said, you know, I don't think I'll ever see him really fight his way into this Canadian squad and be a player. And he's proven me wrong time and time again. So I'm excited for him. I think that he can be a player. I still think he's a little raw and has work to do, but I'm excited about getting him called in. I'm really intrigued to see what Jesse wants to do with him, and if we see him against Panama, where he may play.
Yeah, and I think too, we have to remember that, you know, players evolve. Like Bassong now, he's still only 25. Like, yes, sometimes we always feel like 25, it's, you know what you get, but you know, that's not always true, especially a guy with Bassong. He had such a weird career path, bouncing to Europe, coming to Montreal, then trying to go to the like Romanian league or wherever he ended up for a while there, and now coming back to KC. Like, it's tough for a guy, especially in terms of, like we mentioned, he's played essentially every position. At least I've seen him play every position, bar striker. He's done it all. He sometimes it takes a little time to settle. So I think for Bassong, the fact that he's kind of, you know, found a home in KC where they've been willing to give him a look all season, especially now later on. And you have to remember, like for KC, they started him in a cup final. They started him recently in games where they're already looking forward to next year. That's a vote of confidence of what they feel he can bring down the road. And lastly, Jesse Marsh hasn't seen Zoran Bassong. Yeah, maybe we kind of, saw what he could be under John Herdman. Maybe Jesse Marsh has different ideas, and Marsh kind of spoke to that of, okay, what he's been impressed with Bassong and what he's known and what the sort of growth he's shown in his game. So I think it's something for Bassong. This is a friendly. You may as well get a look at a guy like Bassong, because who knows with how things are in this game, especially he's Smalcone, comes back, looks great for Marseille, boom, you flick the switch, you get injured. All of a sudden you're looking down the depth chart. It is better to know what you got than kind of sitting there and being like, oh shoot, it's in November, it's a Nations League game, and we're down 3 of our regulars in midfield. Who's next? Well, Jesse Marsh is kind of getting ahead of that by looking at the likes of Bassong. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see who's next, because there's a lot of guys who you kind of want to see get a bit of a look, right? Like you even think of, Kosi Thompson. I know he's mentioned there as a bit of a project, but Thompson, I feel like he's found a bit of stability as of late for TFC in terms of his performances. Unfortunately missed the penalty in the CanChamp final, and that will stick with him. But before then he was having a good run. Maybe you can see what he looks like long term, because he's been playing finally a bit more of a midfielder, because I know that's his natural position. There's other guys, Kobe Franklin at Toronto. You look at Montreal, Jaquil Marshall-Rudy has really settled in nicely with that Montreal team.
Ryan
Raposo. Continue to look at more of these guys, because hey, it's good to build that depth, and just to have guys hungry on the cusp, willing to push their way in.
It is, and that's a very interesting point, Alex. I would say, and in my opinion, just if you look at the player's resume right now, Ryan Raposo deserves a call up before a lot of the players who actually got this call up. In my opinion, I think he does. I think the reason that's what I kind of started with, I think it's because of the position of need, and we have a ton of depth at wide, even up front. So the fact that all of a sudden I don't have it off the top of my head, Alex. I don't know how many games he's not played all season long as the 6. I would say roughly.
It's like the last few weeks. I know the final was the first time I really noticed it. Like, oh, right. Okay.
I'd say 5 matches maybe. Right? Maybe he played that, but all of a sudden he's doing it, and he's impressing his coach. He's locked down a starting role, I'd say right now. It makes sense to me, especially given our 6 depth. So, I'm very excited for that. We got a couple questions coming in saying, "Where's Alistair Johnston? He picked up an injury in a night to forget." Celtic got battered 7-1 against Dortmund.
Dortmund looked great though,
and he picked up
your beloved Dortmund looked great.
I know, but that's how Dortmund are. They'll find big wins like that, then they'll go and they'll lose to Werder Bremen. It's the way that the team is. But yeah, I mean, and Adeyemi looks pretty good too. He scored it. He's had some really good form after playing with the German U21s, and he just kind of continued that form. But anyways, but Dortmund did to Celtic kind of hurt me. But anyway, moving on. Where do you guys see Seeger long term? In the midfield or right back? How high is his ceiling? Excellent question from Jeremy. I'll jump quickly. I desperately hope we see him in the midfield. I want him to. I just think, given his profile, given his age, and given our need, I also personally think Alex. I think he likes playing in the midfield a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So I think he's got the technical ability to be a very good midfielder. I think he could link up really well with Eustachio, and I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. I would imagine, he could end up in a top 5 league one day. I don't know, how high up in that league he can go, but I think that this kid's got a lot to prove. I'm excited to see where he goes, and I really hope he continues to develop as a midfielder rather than a right back. But I just mentioned it and we know it. Canada and their players are usually versatile. There's probably very few players in the squad that can't play at least a couple of different positions, so it's always handy. And when you have an injury like this, for example, Alistair Johnston's out, maybe we do see Seeger at right back for a little bit. I don't know. That's where we saw him actually in the last window. So, Alex, what do you think? Do you? I'd imagine you're probably similar. You'd prefer him more in the midfield.
Yeah, he has all the tools for me to be an elite midfielder down the road. Like the way he moves, the size, his dribbling, his passing, his defensive game. He ticks all those boxes. For him, it's regular minutes at Hayuk just because he obviously had the injury, so they've been easing him in. He's been coming off the bench, scored a couple weeks ago, which is great to see. And then long term, I could see him be a top midfielder, somewhere in the top 5 leagues, like you mentioned, whether it's, top of the top 5 leagues or if it's in the middle of the pack, we'll see. That would depend on his development. But what's nice for Canada is you can look long term. You can see a potential first choice midfielder and a third choice right back, right? That's the versatility. And right now, Johnston's injury, boom, all of a sudden he's second choice. And that means, say Larea, he'll start against, especially it's at BMO Field against Panama. He loves the game against Panama. If something happens to Larea, or if he's tired, or you need to rest him, or if there's an injury or something, although it's worth noting that at that point, Larea might know what his TFC season's like, because they don't play any games after that unless they make the playoffs. Well, at least you know Seager's there and you can throw him in as an option. So that's why I say the flexibility is a good thing, but I see him as a midfielder long term.
Beautiful. Sorry about that. I don't know, my camera just went fuzzy for a sec, so I turned it off. But Alex, I got another question firing right back at you.
Beauty, Vancouver.
What do you think? Should we listen to Vanny?
I'd say keep an eye on him.
Okay.
Keep an eye on Isaac Boehmer. We were just talking about him today, actually, in Whitecap circles, and for him, what's been the biggest thing is his development arc. Like literally 3 years ago, 2021, we were watching him play for the U23s, and there were some serious questions of, would he even make the jump up to next pro? Would he even make the jump to be a decent CPL keeper? He was so raw. There was a lot for him to work on in his game, and he's just been head down working incredibly hard. And now you look at him like, oh wait, I think there's not just an MLS keeper, there's the upside of a pretty good MLS keeper, because he's just 22. And the way he's turned around his game is remarkable. Like, he's big. They talk a lot about his frame and how that excites them, especially Yusuf Daha. Like, if you don't know Yusuf Daha, research Yusuf Daha, the Whitecaps goalkeeper coach. He was at Montreal. This guy's worked with like Max Crepeau, Evan Bush. You look down the list, Yohei Takaoka now with the Whitecaps. He's worked with some incredible goalkeepers and has such a good pedigree. And he's loved what Boehmer can bring. For Boehmer, what's next is just the playing with the ball at his feet. That's probably the area of the game where he's still very raw. But he's improved a lot. The way he catches, his positioning, his saves, and all that. So yeah, I think Jesse Marsh should listen. Right now he's in a battle just to earn the third. I think Sirois has an edge for now, but especially there's questions if Boehmer becomes the Whitecaps, starter next year, or if he at the very least becomes a lot more regular next year. If that's the case, Boehmer could very well slot in. So I think it's something that maybe it's not in the next few months, but definitely in 2025, I'll be keeping a very close eye on Isaac Boehmer.
I like it. He's getting some love in the chat as well. I have another conversation I'm excited to talk to you about, Alex, because I've seen it a lot mentioned. I recently talked with Manuel about Jacob Shaffelburg. We were talking about a potential transfer, and Manuel put out a tweet, actually, which gave me the idea to record with him about because Shaffelburg is such a loved player with Canada, and every time he plays for the Maple Leaf, he does so well. People forget or just kind of tune in and remember Jacob's moments with the national team, which are always usually successful. They don't really realize that when it comes to playing for Nashville, it's not like he's a bad player, but it's not like he's taking MLS by storm. And that's maybe part of the reason he hasn't got a move to Europe, but it's also the fact that, he does love Nashville. He just had a baby. He's happy there. So I want to throw something to you, because Liam Millar is quietly having a very, very strong start to his career with Hull City. I think he's been very successful in the championship already for a few seasons. And now he's told us, Alex, and he's told me several times, he wants to play as a winger. So now seeing him being able to play as a winger, not as a wing back, scoring goals, getting assists, being impactful. He's got very good stats throughout the championship right now. If you look at Shaffelburg at club level and you compare it to Liam Millar, it's not really a debate. Liam Millar is having a much better season, in my opinion, playing in a much more competitive league. Kind of seems like a no-brainer that he would be our starting left-handed side. The interesting thing is, though, when it comes to playing for Canada, Jacob Shaffelburg just finds a way to score goals, to impress, and to be an exciting player. So I want to throw it over to you. Right now, Jacob Shaffelburg is, like I mentioned, he just had his baby, so congratulations to him. He hasn't been playing overly well for Nashville. He has been playing because he took a few weeks off to be with his family. And Liam Millar has been just, carving up championship right now. So do you think, but I really think that Jesse Marsh kind of looks a little bit towards Jacob Shaffelburg in that position. Who do you think starts against Panama? Do you think the form of Liam Millar will be rewarded, or do you think that Jacob Shaffelburg and his performances for Canada will be remembered?
I'd say Shaffelburg, just based on the idea that Marsh kind of wants to approach it with what, a winning group from the start, or what he views. And I think if you're continuing that, Shaffelburg is coming off a good camp, that he's just been so good for Canada. He earns it, but it is a tough discussion. And in terms of Miller, I mean, Miller started a game in the last window, so Jesse Marsh is clearly looking at him. But it's something right now where there's a certain line you can have with form, and Shaffelburg's been on the right side of it. That whereas it's something where maybe he hasn't been performing at the not performing great, because there's a whole lot of factors, but maybe he hasn't been where you want him to be at the moment. But when you have a certain amount of performances and you're consistently doing it, like that was Kyle Larin before the World Cup. He wasn't playing yet. He put on a Canada shirt, he'd score, and you're like, all right, if that's the case, that's you're not going to turn that down. And for Shaffelburg, he's kind of at that position right now, and that's not a bad thing, because I think for Liam Millar, he's in such great form. It's just for him, all right, take that form and go out and win that spot back from Jacob Shaffelburg. And at the same time, there isn't this pressure of you need to translate that form. It's kind of like go and win that spot. And I think for that to happen, that's going to be Shaffelburg's. If it's a race, right? Shaffelburg's in pole position. He's getting the start. You let him play from the start. And maybe it's something for Millar, especially if Shaffelburg struggles against Panama. Turn to Millar early. Do it at halftime. Don't wait. So that's kind of how I feel like Jesse Marsh is going to approach it. Because definitely I want to see Millar rewarded for his form, and I think it's deserved if he does. But there's also a balancing act of you can't forget what Shaffelburg's done lately just because he's been so clutch.
That's why I think it's a fascinating topic. I was curious to see what you were going to say, because I agree. I feel like playing at a better level, and you're right now with your club, you're the better player. Like I think Liam should get the start, but then I don't think he will. Because there's a lot of players like that. Gareth Bale is the prime example of a player who maybe isn't doing it at the club, but when it comes to his country, I don't know what it is. Things just work. There's plenty of examples like it right now. Jacob Schaff, I just feel like sometimes and that's what Manuel was kind of pointing out. Is I just think that the Canadian fans just are watching Schaff. He's like, me too. I sometimes forget that he's not really doing it that consistently for Nashville, where that's probably that was a whole other conversation about him maybe getting a transfer and why he didn't. But
that's it. It's in terms of the transfer, it has a big effect. So I'd implore people, because I know we even have a comment here, Shaffelburg needs to go to Europe. I agree, but that starts with club, because ultimately that's what the scouts are looking at most regularly, right? Like they'll see the national team, all right, this guy's good. But they'll be regularly seeing what he does at the club, because ultimately they're not paying Canada for a transfer fee. They're paying Nashville for a transfer fee, and they'll want the body of work of what he's done at Nashville. That's the nature of the game, and also it's little things, right? It's fit. Maybe there's just something about the way Jesse Marsh plays and the way Jesse Marsh unlocks Shaffelburg. But what I like too is that another Jesse Marsh thing he said a lot in this press conference, which was interesting, is he's pushing guys to take what they learn in this camp and to apply it with the club level. And he said Saliba was a textbook example. Like with Saliba, he said, look, I know you can hit another level. I know, you showed it in this camp. As the camp went on, you started a bit timid and you finished really strong. Go do that with Montreal. Go be a star. Go be the guy there. And Saliba took it. Boom. Well, I imagine Marsh is probably sitting there like, look, Jacob, like after this summer, you're trending in a direction where you can go to Europe. Well, go to Nashville and be that guy. Maybe if they don't make the playoffs, he's looking at next year, like go be a star, go get 10 goals, 10 assists, and you're going to get to Europe. You're going to play a key piece. So I think that's also, that I imagine those sorts of discussions are happening. And for Shaffelburg, it's timing, right? The fact that he had all this momentum from Copa America. And again, this is where MLS, their schedule, you have all this momentum and you get dropped in the Leagues Cup, and then you're off for like 3 weeks, and then he has his bait. Like it's just not been ideal schedule. I think it would also help Shaffelburg to have an opportunity to gather some of that momentum, because it feels like both times, because then he picked it back up in September, right? Then that's when he had the kid. It's just also been timing hasn't been the kindest.
The interesting thing I found during Copa America, because of Canada's crazy run, no one expected them to go on that run, which got us a lot of attention. And Alex, I can't imagine how many videos we would have done. Like, I mean, I have my channel, we have One Soccer, we've gone on other channels. Like, I felt like for a month straight, all I talked about every single day, like in depth, was just Canada. But the thing I always found so funny was when I was doing a pregame, or we were doing our watch-alongs, or even post-games, or going on other creators' channels. I got asked, who's number 14? I've never heard of number 14. Where's number 14 play? Why is he not in Europe? There's no way number 14 plays for an MLS. No one, because no one was like the other like Copa America fans, the not Canadian fans and probably some American fans, were just tuning in because they were so fascinated by Canada's run, and they were pretty much stunned by watching this little mullet man run around and be incredible, and they didn't even know who he was. So they were shocked to hear that he was in Major League Soccer, and because of this performance, you kind of thought that maybe he would have got that boost and got a move, but obviously he didn't. I think when it comes to Major League Soccer, I find, Alex, that it's probably more ideal to get a move. Like I don't like how like Tajon's a good example. I don't like getting the move in January when you're going in mid-season against a team that's already got their squad figured out, their positions. I think it makes it more difficult. But I just thought that Jacob could have had a good opportunity to maybe move this summer, but doesn't mean that he wanted to. It doesn't mean that the opportunities were there. But I do want to say that he impressed. He impressed so many different people throughout the summer.
Yeah, and I think what's also worth noting, though, is that it's also circumstantial. And one thing that was brought up that was very interesting. So we've been having a lot of this discussion about Ali Ahmed in Vancouver and what his future could look like. So sometimes it's also, you have to remember the club's position, because for them, they have a lot of value of like Ali Ahmed. He's still on his like first contract. He's not even on the salary cap for the Whitecaps, and he's given them like good level production in terms of his performances. If you're a team coming from Europe and maybe you're like, yeah, I like Ali Ahmed, but I only want to give you $1 million. If you're the Whitecaps, you're not in a position where you're like, we need to give him for $1 million, because he's giving you more value than that, said $1 million could do. And I do also wonder if there's a bit of that with Shaffelburg, because it's something where he's on, he's on 400K, like in terms of MLS standards and what he's providing, the fact he's just got his green card, so he's a domestic in Nashville. There's a lot of value where they're also going to need an offer that turns their head. You saw with Moise Bombito, where Moise Bombito had his breakout, he almost never left Colorado, right? Because they set a strong line in the sand of like, look, we got this kid in the super draft. He's a domestic. He's like on 80K a year. He doesn't even count on the cap because he's Generation Adidas. We want $7 million. And finally, Nice were like, all right, we have $7 million. Here's $7 million. But Bombito easily could have stayed till the summer. So I think also you have to remember there's the club situations, and that's where it can be tough as well. And where sometimes you have to wait for January, right? Because that's maybe when an option is up. Maybe a team's like, all right, I'll sell you because I have more chance to find a replacement. And that's another thing too with the mid-season, is that it needs to make sense for the club. They need to be able to get your replacement. And sometimes that doesn't always line up. And for every moment where you get a Bombito and he makes that move and the timing's perfect, there are countless others where it just doesn't make sense. And that's maybe something where further down the road, it might make more sense for a Nashville.
Well, in that same video I did with Manuel, we talked about 3 players. We talked about Jonathan David, Jacob Shaffelburg, and Ali Ahmed. And I saw on X today, and I wish I saved it, but it was a really good tweet. It was from a Whitecaps fan. They grabbed my thumbnail and just said like, interesting video, or but if I'm like being a Whitecaps fan, makes no sense for Ali Ahmed to leave. And then describe his contract situation, like, what he's worth to Vancouver, basically saying if we're in win now mode, like unless we're getting banked, because I am a Canadian fan too, and I want to see Ali go to Europe, but otherwise selfishly I want to see him stay at, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what the tweet said. It just basically,
well, I found the tweet. You can bring it up if you want. It's Whitecaps. I know everyone on the Whitecaps.
Right, okay, you can bring it up. Or just read it out loud, because it was an interesting tweet, and it kind of told me a little bit more about Ali's contract situation that I didn't even think about.
Yeah, it was just Caleb Wilkins. He's a writer over at the Third Sub, which shout out.
Okay, I found it. Yes, I'll bring it up
to Caleb. So
there it is. It was a good tweet. There we go. The prospect of Ali Ahmed moving abroad has been brought up a lot, but he's a supplemental roster, which I literally didn't even realize.
Like he's still on his first MLS contract.
It's just wild, man. That's wild, really. Yeah. Anyways, that's why I just didn't know that. Contracted until 2026 and provides at least TAM level contributions in a win now phase. I'd want an obscene amount of money to part with him. So I thought it was a really good tweet. I thought it makes a lot of sense, and I thought it kind of gives another another layer when it comes to actually seeing Ali move, because the Whitecaps are in good form, and there's a chance he could impress in the playoffs this year as well. And I've seen it, I think, down in that comments, maybe some are saying, call me crazy, but maybe Ali's not quite ready yet. Like he is still pretty young. He's just growing as a player. Like there's some debate of, not even the fact that, he's playing good for Canada, he's playing good for the Whitecaps, but just saying, just let the kid ride it out for just a little bit. Like, let him finish off this strong season. I don't know where you land on that, Alex, in terms of, is it too soon to maybe go right, or if he would have went like right now or in January, or what do you think with Ali?
I think it would have been ready, but I think the challenge with him is go be dominant. Because what I found interesting is that I put Ali Ahmed's after September, because Ali Ahmed had a good September window. I actually went on FB Ref. Shout out to that website. Absolutely love what that website does. And I did a comparison chart of, all right, like, what does Ali Ahmed look like versus Tajon Buchanan. Funnily enough, I actually kept it. I never posted it anywhere. Let's see if I can get it up here. I actually got the chart. May as well. Do you see it?
I do, yeah.
So I just compared it just to see, because similar ages, similar profiles. We talked last window about Buchanan versus Ahmed. And if you see it here, this is Buchanan's breakout season, right? That's when he got the move to Bruges, 5 million. There's actually like a surprising a lot of overlap in a lot of character areas. Like, look at the blue, right? That's Ahmed. You got shot creating actions is better than Buchanan. In terms of final chance creation, Buchanan was slightly better. That makes sense. He was lethal that season. But then expected assists, Ahmed has the quite slight edge. And then in terms of more of a goal scorer, Buchanan he was scoring a lot under Bruce Arena that season. As assists, his non-penalty goals was all up. And then Ahmed is a slightly better defender, which makes sense because he's played a lot deeper before. But like, it's not an outrageous comparison other than actual end product in terms of the expected, in terms of the shot creation. But what's missing is that end product. So I think there's also the challenge now for Ahmed is to go and go get some goals, go get some assists, because that's the one thing that's been missing in his game for the Whitecaps, that he's been putting in these exceptional performances all year long, yet he only has like a goal and 2 assists in 30 games. That's something where scouts in Europe are going to be like, all right, we want to see you take that next step. So I think that's also worth noting, that for Ahmed, he still has that step to hit in his game if he's going to become the sort of $5 to $6 million player that the Whitecaps want him to be if they're going to part ways. So it's kind of a mix of where he's at and where the Whitecaps need him to be. And
a little different, but Shaffelburg, the same kind of thing. That's what they're saying. It's like up, like, and you just said it, up those numbers. 10 goals, 10 assists, you'll get a big kind of move. And there's the eye test can show that Jacob can be an important player in the team, but at the end of the day, you want to see them produce. That's what he can. We know he can produce. We've seen him do it with Canada at a high level, but he just can't seem to be able to do it in Major League Soccer. I think Ahmed, a little bit younger, has the opportunity to maybe do that as well. We'll have to wait and see. But we'll move on, Alex, because we're going to do this, and we already have someone throwing up a lineup. We'll do it very, very quickly. We'll try to build our predicted, and I have them to share my tactics. So I don't know, maybe this is the exact team we're going to go with. So let us know, guys, in the comment section.
Well, I guess just lastly, before we do dive in, I do want to just kind of touch on, I think Christian mentioned them off the top, just because there are 2 names that we have been hearing a lot of recently, because we talked about a lot of who was in the squad and maybe some of the fringe.
This comment?
I think it was the first. Oh, actually, I can just grab it here. So the first one was any thoughts on Jovan Ivanisevic getting a call up? He's a former TFC Academy guy. I think he's just 19, a center back, playing in the Croatian first division. Then, of course, one you're a little more familiar with, he scored lately, Luka Kalenovic. And I know we also got a bit of a second question here from Vincent on Ivanisevic. So just quickly want to touch on that, especially Kalenovic. I mean, you saw that goal he scored lately. He's finding a bit of form right now for Heracles.
I did mean to do that, so we can go into that conversation a little bit more about players, because a few other players I want to mention too, so we can do that very quickly. We have time. And I was going to start with a few other strikers. Another one is Ike Ubo, a player that he's not off to a great start, but Kalenovic is. And I said to you, Alex, I feel like this player could go to the Eredivisie and could score a lot of goals. I just had a feeling. I'm not saying he's going to hit double digits, but it kind of seems like there's a chance he could be around there. It's just difficult with the amount of depth that this team has. And I guess if you look at what Jesse Marsch is doing with getting new players in, it seems to be in positions of need, right? we're not seeing a lot of new wingers. We're not seeing a lot of new strikers. We're seeing that a couple, players he wants to see in there in the midfield and really the center back positions. I'd say that's probably it. No, like Jamie Knight-Labelle is a good example. Luke de Fougerolles, what he brought in. Saliba coming in is great. Seeger, a dual national coming in. We're not really seeing players out wide. I know Stephen Afrifa came in. But other than that, maybe if Hoylett was healthy, it could have been him. Buchanan was healthy, it could have been him. So who were the strikers this window? We had David Laren,
Bear,
and
Oluwase.
Tanny.
It was a lighter, which makes sense. They only have one game. They don't need
5-6 strikers.
Well,
but I mean,
especially because JRR has international duty too,
Yeah.
or not international, like because Columbus has some games to make up, so he'll get a play at least.
But I mean, we've seen times where he was called in as well, so we had 5 strikers. So I guess with Klinovic, I'm not surprised, although I would like to see. I mean, Promise Dave is another player. Like, there's a few Canadian strikers. The last time Alex and I did a depth chart, we had like 10 names on there. Like, we are not lacking in depth right there. But I guess, Alex, the simple answer is that Jesse has kind of his 4 or so strikers right now lined up, and maybe he doesn't really need to see anything quite yet. And 5, I guess. I mean, if you count, it's difficult to knock those players out of the way. I mean, if you counted Ugbo too, that's 6. But I think Ugbo is maybe just on the side right now, and I would say it's Russell Rowe, Bear, Tanny that are kind of competing for that 3rd, 4th spot, and then you have David Laren. So I just think that Klinovic is gonna have to be, having a hat trick and then scoring in a cup type of week like Jonathan David to probably get some real attention there. But I mean, all you can do is perform, try to find the back of the net, keep improving your game, and I think he's off to a good start with his new club.
Yeah, well, I think it's worth noting with both of those names, starting with Kulenovic, there's the dual national aspect. And like there is the wonder, like Bosnia, looking at a striker who's scoring in the Eredivisie, you can't help but wonder if they want it and or want him looking at him. So that's also the dual national factor.
And Alex, quickly, sorry, I want to get your thoughts on this because I think it's important, and I get asked it all the time. It's like when there's a dual national, when there's 2 countries that are maybe similar. Let's just use Canada and Bosnia for example. Like maybe this player can make an impact around that level. At what point though do you think that it's BS what maybe the coach is saying to you? Because if you're Klinovic, hypothetically, let's just say he's open to both Bosnia and Canada, and Jesse said, "Hey man, like we maybe want to get you in," but so does the Bosnia coach, and you're looking at Canada's 6 strikers that we already talked about, plus 3-4 dual nationals. And what happens when Jesse just talks to Tanny and says, "Hey man, like we want to get you to commit"? Tanny was eligible for the United States and Nigeria. You made certain promises to certain players, and all of a sudden now your striker pool is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe these are just false promises. Do you think that has any impact on it, or do you think that I'm just reaching for straws right now?
There's no false promises. It's the international game. The reality is like anyone can, other than like there aren't many guarantees is what I'm saying. Like, yes, if you're Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, there is a certain level of guarantee, but at a certain point, especially if you're talking about those guys, they have to get the form. They have to get into the mix. They have to keep it. I think you can only have too much, like you can't have too much depth at the international level because there's teams across the world. Like even France sometimes wishes they have more depth in certain positions, right?
Right, in the right back.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure they wouldn't stop at it. So I think for Canada, you have to call. You have to make the calls. And I can't imagine Jesse Marsch was giving false promises because it's probably the same thing with all of them. Like, look, I have a chart. I will give you chances if you earn them. Case in point, Tanny Oluwase, he earned his chances. He got them. But then as he's also shown, he's been tough with guys of like, you got to earn it. You got to stay in. Nothing is guaranteed. And you can only have multiple guys. And I think that's why I'd say with Kulenovic, I feel like you have to make a call. And I think with that, it comes down to the player of he can look and be like, okay, maybe I have a more clear path to starting with Bosnia, especially look at, Dzeko and his age and just the overall pool. Or he can be like, you know what, I feel a bit more Canadian. I just put it out there because I think recently on his Instagram, he like changed his like handle to something Canada.
Yeah.
Like he's clear and he's born in Toronto. Like he clearly has a connection. Well, call him and be like, look, we like what you're doing. We like your profile. If you want to commit, here's the line. Like you're not, it's the same reason of like, I'm sure he has Google and we'll see Jonathan David, Theo Bear. Like he knows Kyle Laren, what he's going up against. And because as we know with dual nationals, it can come down to factors such as heart, such as, agents, such as, just whether you're getting more minutes. I think you have to call him, because I actually watched one of Kalinovic's games recently. There's a very interesting profile there.
Right?
Like, he is built like a rugby player and has the touch of a 5'5" midfielder. There's a lot to like with that profile and how he plays and his speed. The game I watched him, he had 3 breakaways, 2 fantastic saves, then he scored one and was offside. But you like that he's getting in good positions. If he continues to progress the Eredivisie, I think you continue to call. And the same goes for Ivanisevic at the back, especially given his age. You're looking at guys like Knight Labelle, you're looking at Luke de Fougerolles. Ivanisevic is the same age as, or right in between both of them in terms of age. He's eligible to go elsewhere. I'd also say similar reasons for why Marsh should invite them down the road. Now I'm just curious to see what happens with both of them, because this was kind of like, unless one of them pops off, I don't know if we'll see them in November. And then, Canada will hope that in March they're playing Nations League games. So I'm kind of curious of when's the next opportunity to see this whole crop of dual nationals. And that's where maybe it'll be interesting to see if any teams sweep in over that time.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear too. I didn't mean false promises, as in Jesse would say, like, saying,
No, of course, of course.
No, I just want to make sure the chat knows, because that's just part of the game. I'm assuming the conversation would be something along the lines of Jesse be like, Luca, I love your game. I want you to come to this team, but you got to know that this is a competitive, striker pool. We would like to give you a chance. And just kind of do a conversation on that, because I don't think Jesse is, and many coaches aren't naive enough to say, if you come here, you will play all the time. That's not how it works.
That's how you alienate many guys, right?
Exactly. But
it's the business.
Yeah, and I hope I hope his heart's here, and I hope he proves that he backs himself. He's like, call me up. Maybe I don't get it right away, but just see what I can do. 2 other names we will go for. Anything on Ugbo quickly before we move on to the 2 Montreal guys?
He's just got to get his form. I watched a bit of him today because Sheffield played Bristol, and it was thankfully it was on the zone for once, so I was able to get it on with the multi-view at the Champions League games. Just didn't see much of him. He didn't touch the ball much, just kind of wasn't getting into the game as much as I hoped. So for him, just get your form back, because as we know with Ugbo, he's always been a streaky scorer, and just getting up to full speed right now seems to be his priority, because he had that goal a couple of weeks ago, or it might have been over a month ago, and the cup against a lower division team. We haven't really seen him get going in the championship, so it's probably a mixture of his form as well, because I don't think if you're Jesse Marsh and you're looking at all the other strikers, you got reasons to call them in, especially for this camp. Like, okay, maybe Tani Oluwasi's slowed down a bit from Minnesota, but he's close. It's easy flight from Minnesota to Montreal and then to Toronto, so it makes sense to keep giving him looks when he's been so good off the bench for Canada in terms of the energy and the work rate.
Yeah, I'll be quick with Ugbo. I'm a big fan of him. I don't know what the situation was with Copa America, but I'd say unless he starts really scoring goals and finding form right now, you just kind of put him aside. Jesse made it clear that the door is not closed, but if we're talking a little bit of form and the amount of strikers we have in this pool, probably doesn't make a lot of sense to call Ugbo in right yet. And the last 2 players we'll talk about, Marshall Ruddy and Samuel Piette. I don't know, man. Like, we're talking about Bassong coming in because I think that all of a sudden he's played 3-4 games as a midfielder. Now maybe he looks as an option. I just don't know if Jesse fancies Piette. That's my reaction with it. We've seen him call in. We haven't seen him play. He's approaching a little like the 30s. I don't know if he's 30 yet or he's close to 30. And then Marshall Ruddy, I just think there's a lot of depth there. I mean, I guess you could have maybe saw him come in instead of like a Poku, for example, but depends on what Jesse wants to see. But I'd say Marshall Ruddy is closer to being a Jesse Marsh type of player than Piette is. And I don't know if Piette's, it sounds harsh because it's long and I don't know, but I just don't feel like Piette's going to be looked at. And if he's called into camp, I don't think we're going to see him play.
I think it's clear of what Marsh views Piette as. It's depth and an option to have around some leadership. And right now, the last 2 windows, he didn't need that, right? It's looking at younger guys, letting them in. I think that's what it's going to be going forward. Maybe it'll be something where in November, he has a younger squad. He wants to call in some leadership. He'll call in Piette, if not. And I think that's kind of where Piette is at in his career, right? Especially that some intriguing options have stepped up at the number 6. So it's not a shot at what Piette's done and what he's doing. And but sometimes you just know what you have. And whereas with Marshall Ruddy, I see something for him next year. If he can,
Yeah.
the way he's looked recently, and if he can start strong with Montreal, kind of look at Canada's okay fullback depth, and the way like he seems to just be clicking in that wingback position, I think that's something where it feels like he's close to getting a good look.
I like it. Now to end off the stream, Alex, as we always do, this will be very quick. We won't be too long about it because I have to share my tactics, and it's already built for me, sort of. So
there you go.
I'll go very quickly through it, and then you just stop me or you come in if you think that there's going to be a change. I assume Jesse's going to play in his typical 4-4-2. I do think Crepeau will actually be our keeper. Right back will be Larea, Bombito, Cornelius is 2 center backs, Davies left back. I would imagine we're going to see Choinière Eustachio in the midfield, Ahmed out right. I think it'll, like we talked about this, I think it'll be Schaff and then Lair and David up front. I feel
especially like after Laren's goal recently, I guess. Yeah,
it felt good.
Yeah, especially I guess. Yeah, the only real changes I could see because, just I know there's a question on Theo Bair. He's coming off an injury. That's why he hasn't been playing as much for Auxerre. He obviously missed the last camp with an injury, and since then he hasn't really gotten into rhythm to start again for Auxerre. So I imagine maybe we see some Bair off the bench. Maybe you see some Osorio at the 10, right? Like you always wonder, could Osorio play at the 10? Maybe you see a start for Seeger. But yeah, I think other than those things, I think for the most part, this is pretty much it. Miller's the other one, but we talked about that. I think Shaffelburg gets the edge. But who knows? Maybe we do see a bit of a Liam Millar.
The reason I'm leaning towards maybe seeing Liam Millar is just because Schaff, he hasn't been playing, because he had his baby, so he's just been coming back. I don't think he's started yet. I could be wrong. Maybe he started the last one, but he's coming back and trying to get to full fitness again after taking a few weeks off. So maybe that's part of it. And Liam scored on the weekend.
Well, we'll see. Shaffelburg plays tonight and this weekend, so
that's true.
We'll get back to how much he does actually end up playing. And hey, Nashville's in a playoff push, so I'm sure they'd love to have him for these last 3 games as available as possible. So we'll get back to on the Shaffelburg one. That one could also very well depend on how much he plays over the next 2 days, and if Millar scores another goal, right, and makes things a little tougher in that discussion.
Absolutely. So I guess that's kind of the team. The dream one, I would like to see Seeger maybe find a way in there, or honestly, if we go 4-2-3 with Santiago Lopez at the 10, but we're not going to see it because this game this game kind of matters. Like it does matter. Like this, it's a weird one. Like we mentioned off the top, it's a friendly, but the
dream, if you're going to be honest, the dream is Jonathan David scores, keeps his red hot form. Everyone's like, look at this guy scoring for club country. Beautiful. Kyle Aaron scores. Just so they stay kind of neck and neck in the all-time scoring race. Kyle Aaron finally scores, gets that monkey off his back for Canada, having now done it for country. Maybe you get a third goal from someone. Maybe Bombito gets his first for Canada. Or, maybe Eustachio scores one from distance. And then because you have such a good first half, you're able to bring in Lopez a little earlier. You can bring in Knight LaBelle for your first cap. You can give Millar a big look off the bench, and maybe even you get someone like we see a little more like a Bear. We haven't seen much of a Bear, but of course that's the dream scenario, and I'm sure Jesse Marsh would love for his team to be up 3-0 at halftime. We'll see if they can do that, because I'd love to see them score 3 goals in a game, because I don't think they've actually done that yet under Marsh. So one milestone at a time, but sometimes you got to dream big, right?
Hey, your strikers are coming in at the right time right now. This is the most form I think we've seen Jonathan David and Kyle Aaron come together at the right time. So maybe the writing is going to be in the stars here. But that's all the time we have on today's stream, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Drop a like, drop a sub on your guys' way out. Stay tuned. There'll be a lot of content coming on the channel, especially as the Panama match approaches. And hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers, friends.